You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You are listening to us on CBS Radio, WJFK 1580 AM, or you're visiting us at WMCLive.com to access this and all of our previous episodes. Look for WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter, and you can now stream, download, and even subscribe to our show's podcast worldwide at iTunes. Today, my guests cover a range of concerns, from incarcerated women enduring solitary confinement to literary feminism, with a new director of the Feminist Press. And, ta-da! Funny, smart, talented Kathy Najimy joins us again, now as a periodic regular, to muse on politics, movies, motherhood, and general being alive in the here and now. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. Jessica Valenti is one of the women who put young feminism on the map. With her blog, Feministing, that she founded, she's now a columnist at The Nation, and she recently, I think it was in the March 3rd issue, which of course appears well before March 3rd, wrote a piece called The Empowerment Elite Claims Feminism, which is a very interesting article, and I want to have her on soon to discuss it at greater length. But for now, I want to focus on just one aspect of it. She was critiquing the TED Talks conferences. TED, TED Talks are online series that garners millions and millions of watchers and listeners. And she noticed that they had never had something on abortion. And so the consensus, as she asked around, was that the omission was just an oversight. But, as she wrote in her piece, it turns out TED Talks are deliberately keeping abortion off the agenda. When asked for comment, TED content director Kelly Stoetzel, 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 said that abortion did not fit into their focus on, quote, wider issues of justice, inequality, and human rights, close quote. And then another quote from her. Abortion is more of a topical issue we wouldn't take a position on any more than we take a position on a state tax bill, Stoetzel explained. In the last 3 years, the U.S. has seen more abortion restrictions enacted than in the entire previous decade. The United Nations has classified the lack of access to abortion as torture. Just how is abortion not an issue of, quote, justice, inequality, and human rights? Well, when this article came out, something hit the fan. Elise Hogue, the president of NARAL, who's been a guest on this show, young, terrific new president of NARAL, Pro-Choice America, wrote an open letter to TED Talks, and the internet lit up with letters to TED Talks and with buzz about this. So TED Talks answered back, but the way that they answered back was quite questionable. Here again from Jessica Valenti in her own words. Yesterday I published an article revealing that TED had never featured a talk on abortion. And, according to their content director, they had no plans to. The TED staff now says they do consider including talks on abortion, and that I took Stoetzel's quote out of context. TED called my reporting on two different Twitter accounts and a blog post, called my reporting a, quote, rumor, quote, false, and a, quote, misrepresentation. Head of TED Talks, Chris Anderson, tweeted, quote, Internet outrage rule number 1, get really upset about something before finding whether or not it's actually true, close quote. Then Valenti goes on, I am angry and disappointed that TED would malign my work and reputation rather than take responsibility for their words and work. I asked a TED staffer a direct question about why there'd never been a talk on abortion, and I got a direct answer. And then she prints the screenshot from the email exchange and adds, this was no misrepresentation or gotcha quote grabbing. The fact is that TED has never hosted a talk on abortion. The fact is that of all the proposed talks that have been sent their way on abortion, they have rejected 100% of them. Well, Valenti writes that she, and certainly I would ditto this, is glad to hear that Ted believes now that abortion and reproductive care are core issues of social justice and human rights. And supposedly they will be making up for lost time, and reproductive justice leaders like NARAL, Pro-Choice America, and Sea Change have been approaching Ted with the hope of working together and getting Ted to make a public commitment to hosting a talk on abortion next year. For now, if anybody feels like dropping a line to TED Talks, which you can find online, and asking when are they going to host their first talks on abortion, because there has to be more than one, that might not be a bad idea. And kudos to Jessica Valenti for telling the truth, taking the hits from that, and striking back. Our first guest today is someone who makes you realize that Shakespeare wasn't necessarily right in urging that we first kill all the lawyers. Some are really worth saving, as is Jennifer Parrish, the Director of Criminal Justice Advocacy at the Urban Justice Center in New York. Welcome, Jennifer, to the program.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Tell me about women in solitary confinement. Everything that I know about women in prison, which is a fair amount but not obviously exhaustive, tells me that it's worse because of the impact on families, because of women being separated from children, because very often women are in there as an appendage of a crime that men committed. Does solitary impact differently on women as well? I would assume so, but tell me.
Well, I believe it does. As you mentioned, women are more likely to have been caring for their children when they came into prison. About 64% or so have been taking care of their children immediately before they came into prison. Being in solitary can frequently limit your ability to have visits with your family, and also can limit the way that those visits take place. So that's one detrimental effect to the family specifically. In addition, anyone who's in solitary confinement is completely dependent on the correction officers for meeting all of their basic needs. The food trays get brought to their slot and are opened up and slid inside. Any sort of feminine hygiene products that they need are brought by the correction officers, or if they want to punish the women even further, they deny them of all of these services. So women who are in solitary are just that much more likely to be victimized. We know that in prison generally, women are much more likely to be the victims of staff sexual misconduct. And when they're isolated in an environment like solitary confinement where there is not a lot of ways to report what's happened to you, certainly it's an opportunity for more violence and misconduct to be meted out than even in the general population.
So they're all the more vulnerable. Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, one of the a woman who was in prison in Ohio had complained about sexual assault by a male guard, and she ended up being sent to solitary so that she could not tell other women about what had happened, even though they said, frequently they say that putting people in solitary is for their own protection. That's how a lot of juveniles end up in solitary in adult jails, is because they don't have places to put them, so they put them in solitary confinement. So, and also being in solitary creates a risk, much greater risk for suicide and self-harm. We know that the rates of suicide in these units are much higher than in the general population. And certainly here in New York State, a couple of the suicides by women have occurred either in the solitary confinement unit or by a woman who's about to be placed there. She was coming from the prison mental health hospital, and she'd been sentenced to solitary, and before she got to solitary, she took her own life. So it's the effects of this environment can be just horrific.
And you raise an issue that I was going to raise, which is mental health services. We know that there's a large proportion, I don't know whether we have actual figures, but a large proportion of the prison population in general is in fact there, but needing not to be imprisoned, but needing treatment, which is pretty much not available except in the form of drugging people.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, what has happened over the last 50 years is that we've closed our state psychiatric hospitals, which the impetus to do this was a very positive one. People were being warehoused in these centers and not really treated. But rather than, when we close these institutions, creating community mental health services, the money never really was spent on that. And at the same time, we were putting a lot of money into incarcerating people. So now our jails and prisons have become the place that many people with mental illness end up. In fact, James Gilligan, who's a clinical professor of psychiatry, has said that basically the proportion of people who are housed in either a mental hospital or a correction facility is almost the same as it was 50 years ago. Yeah. But back then, about 75% of them were in mental hospitals and 25% in jails and prisons and juvenile centers. And now it's about 95% in correctional facilities and 5% in psychiatric centers.
My God.
It's kind of a trans-institutionalization of this population. And certainly jails and prisons are not therapeutic environments where people can receive the treatment that they need. I mean, really, people, the message of these facilities is really obey, don't break the rules, we are in control, you must submit, and the opposite is true of mental health. It's helping people recover and regain their own ability to make decisions for themselves and have insight into their illness and how to treat that. So you can't really expect a lot of treatment to go on in the jails and prisons, although they do have a constitutional obligation to provide that treatment.
Yeah, well,
and certainly here in New York City, many more of the women who are in the jails and prisons have mental health issues.
It becomes exacerbated then by solitary, because isn't there an increase in paranoia, understandably, I would think, among persons in solitary?
Exactly.
So in other words, if you have a mental health problem and you're not being treated and you act out and you're sent to solitary as punishment, that exacerbates the problem rather than solve it, rather than even address it. It's almost like intentionally rubbing salt in it.
Exactly. And for some people, even who don't have serious mental health issues, when they go into these environments, develop them. I've been working with a woman for quite some time who's been in solitary for almost 2 years now in the city jails. She's a woman who's hasn't had a trial. She's awaiting trial, and she's been there, and she routinely cuts herself, has tried to poison herself, has tried to hang herself, and they will sometimes take her out to the hospital, but they always return her to that environment. So she's frequently not even taken to court sometimes because they won't allow her out of her cell without a captain escort, and the captains don't want to escort her, so she misses going to court, and that delays her trial. So,
Jennifer, how can this be if she's not even been charged?
Well, that's a huge problem, because this is being used. Right, this is being used. I mean, we frequently hear about solitary in the prisons because people spend much longer time in prison, so the amount of times they can spend in solitary is even longer.
Yeah.
But our jails use it too. Here in New York City, we've actually increased the use of solitary over the years. Most people in the jail have not been sentenced for anything. They're awaiting trial. They can't afford bail, and that's why they're there. So to use this punishment on this group of people is, I think, even worse in many ways, because they are just trying to have their day in court, and being in solitary frequently prevents them from or at least delays that from happening.
I mean, the United Nations definition of what constitutes torture is that for any length of time, in this case for adolescents and for people with mental illness, as well as pretrial detainees, is more than 15 days for adults without disabilities, as well as solitary. So this is torture by a United Nations definition.
Yes, and that's why there's been a big organizing effort in New York City around this. We are fortunate in that we have a Board of Correction that has oversight of our city Department of Correction, and so the advocates have really been trying to galvanize support for the Board of Correction to set standards around this and to say, you can't put people in for more than 15 days, and you need to keep some groups out, like the groups you just listed, and have alternative ways of dealing with misbehavior in ways that would be more productive and creating the kinds of response that they want, which is basically to have a jail that has less violence and is more safe for everybody. And we know that solitary confinement does not lead to that kind of environment.
Well, so that we don't all go away psychotically depressed and outraged. Tell me, I know that there are a few reform efforts, so say a few words about those.
For example, in Maine, there was a push to get a law passed, and they were able to get at least a law passed requiring reporting, but then the new correction commissioner came in and with the advocates made some reforms, and they ended up reducing the number of people in solitary, changing the conditions in solitary, reducing the amount of time people spent there, and then the ones who were there, they gave more access to mental health care and services to prevent decompensation, and they really gave them a way to have goals that would help them get out of solitary. And I think what it resulted in, at least from my knowledge of it, is that it changed the view of the way people in solitary were treated, and instead of seeing them as the worst of the worst, seeing them people that could actually improve and be successful if they were given the tools to do that.
Unfortunately, we have to go, but thank you for the work you do. Before we go, tell our listeners how if they want to learn more about this, is there a website or someplace?
Sure. In New York City, there's the Jails Action Coalition, which is nycjac.org. And for New York State, there's the Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement, which is nycaic.org. And you can always go to solitarywatch.com, which has many articles about solitary and different ways to get involved across the country.
Thanks again for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you very much.
We have to take a short pause now here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And if you've been wondering what happens when someone who helped put young feminism on the map takes over the reins of one of this contemporary wave's most revered institutions, we'll find out when we come back in just a minute.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back. When the media began promulgating the myth that younger women weren't interested in feminism, my next guest, Jennifer Baumgardner, was one of the very first to call that a lie. Together with Amy Richards, she co-authored Manifesta, Young Women, Feminism, and the Future, and also they co-authored Grassroots, a field guide for feminist activism. Together, they co-founded Soapbox, which is a lecture bureau for speakers who speak out for activists. Then by herself, Jennifer authored Look Both Ways, Bisexual Politics, and became a filmmaker with I Had an Abortion and with It Was Rape. Now, her multifaceted talents have been turned to being the editorial director and president of the Feminist Press. Welcome to the program, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Wow. You are the new executive director and publisher of the Feminist Press. Let's start there because you're many things, and I want to get to as many of them as we can fit in. But let's start with the press because both you and the press are 43.
Yes, that's right.
You were born in
1970.
Oh my God, that was a very busy year, and clearly a very good year too.
Yeah.
So you are the first of the new generation feminists to head the press, and
Yes.
this is very exciting. Talk about why you took on the job, what your plans are that'll be different for the press, and what'll be the same.
I've been a feminist since birth. I love books. I write, and so it's kind of, there aren't that many jobs where you can combine those things, that
Exactly.
in a management position. But then it was also just the stretch for me. I've worked a lot on my own, and maybe you felt this way when you took over Ms. Magazine.
Exactly.
I loved working on my own, but there was something about being in an office and being accountable in this different way that while I knew it was going to be stressful, and some days I would be bummed that I had taken it on, that I was going to grow a lot as an individual and as a worker and probably as a thinker by doing it. And so the stretch was also very appealing to me.
It's well, you together with Amy Richards had already founded many things: the Soapbox, the lecture agency,
Yes.
and what am I forgetting?
Feminist camp.
Yes,
We
boot
started
camp.
feminist camps.
Boot camp.
Yeah. And we wrote a couple books together. Yeah, Amy Richards. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons I never felt like I needed another office job, is that even though I was a writer and I had to do and a filmmaker and a speaker, and I had to do so many things alone, I also had this partner and collaborator, and so I never felt that lonely. I felt like we kind of created this virtual office. And a lot of projects came out of it, and we worked really, and we still do. We work really, really well together. But now, we're both 43, or I think she turned 44 yesterday, actually. But now we're kind of at this point where we're mid-career and we're making different sorts of reaches. And I think that working with an institution like the Feminist Press is this, it's an honor to get to be able to do it, first of all. And it does remind me of my early career at Ms. Magazine when you actually were the editor-in-chief and when I was an intern, because it's this storied, very important, necessary intervention that happened in culture when I was just, being born.
Yep.
And then feminism has continued to change and develop as we have, and evolve. And these institutions they're necessary still, but they're different. They serve a different purpose. Because, for instance, all the books I've published were published by mainstream publishers. Like, I didn't need to have the Feminist Press publish my book because mainstream publishers were starting to integrate that work into their catalog.
That's right.
Right. And so then what is the role of the Feminist Press? And I think it's that there's still so many things that are just not going to be published by mainstream presses, but they're vital, important, either because they're so cutting edge or because the voices are so marginalized or because the point of view is still quite radical. And so those are the opportunities that I think the Feminist Press still really has. And just the fact that we are so unabashedly feminists. We're very proud of that word.
Yes.
That word is the essence of us. Whereas I always felt with FSG, which is my other publisher, and I love them, and they did a great job with all the books. There was always this moment where they were like, "Do you need to put feminism in the subtitle?"
Yes, that's right. That's absolutely that was Farrah, Straus, and Giroux. But you're absolutely right. And the industry itself is also changing, and the technology book publishing is a very different arena now than it was when the Feminist Press was founded. So whether it's electronic publishing, whether it's e-readers, whether it's interactive publishing, all of that now lies at your fingertips to make it relevant to the next generation and the next and the next.
Right. And that is my goal, is to make it a little bit, sometimes I think of it as younger, but it's not really younger. It's just more right now and relevant to not just the conversations we're having about feminism, but to people's feminist lives. And so some of the books that are coming out that I've had a hand in that will be coming out in the next year or so, one is about is publishing this play called Slut, and in addition to the play and a production guide, there will be essays about slut. And I'm actually one of those people where that word to me is we're just so far from being able to really meaningfully reclaim it.
Yes, I am too.
Okay, good. I'm glad we.
No, I am.
It's really used to render people second class, to render women and girls second class, and to cover up for rape and
yeah. I mean,
shame.
I'm all for reclaiming, no words, but I'm for reclaiming the words that have some. They've been no-nos for women because they have power to them, like bitch or witch, but the words that only sexualize us. Whether it's pussy and Pussy Riot or slut, really do give me pause. When the Black Women's Coalitions came to the original founders of Slut Walks in Canada and said, "Listen, we understand what you're trying to do, but in our community this is not reclaimable. Please rethink this." They didn't rethink it, and of course now it's taken off. So this is an entire book about the usage of the term and what does it really mean? Is it reclaimable?
I don't think it is right now, and I think that girls and women don't, and men and boys don't have the resources to even understand that word. I mean, it's used very casually, but it's also used so abusively. There's so much violence in it still, and I see high school girls grappling with this right now, in New York City high schools of, 1 minute they're trying to reconcile some of their body confidence and some of the sexual power that they have, and that they want to have. And the next minute they're called a slut and they're worthless. And there's just no equivalent. It's such a double standard. There's no equivalent that takes away a man's reputation and his worth among his peers, as a slut does for a girl. So I think it's a really complex term, and I think it's been around from the beginning of time, and I hope that this book will shed light on why it isn't simply something you can reclaim so easily. The way I do think that we can claim our sexual power, and I'm all for that. It's something I'm continuing to try to do, and I think I'll be doing for the rest of my life. But I don't think slut is the avenue.
Good for you. Well, this is going to be a very interesting book, and if it's an arbiter of the kind of books that you're going to be publishing, which go to the heart of contemporary feminism and aren't afraid of controversy, that augurs very, very well. Take a minute and talk about Jennifer, because I have to say, when you are running a feminist institution, and I can say this from experience, the you, that is the writer, the filmmaker, all the other things that you do, the organizer, not so much the organizer, because what you're doing is a form of organizing, but your own books, you're a filmmaker, your own work can tend to get pushed to the back burner.
I mean, I'm trying to look at it as a break from doing my own projects, and an opportunity to have to be immersed in this other entity that's going to need all of my creative energy, but I won't be signing my name to these things.
Right.
So I'm taking a break from making films in a way, and I'm going to take a break from writing books and take a break from writing articles and not do as many lectures and not really be that Jennifer that I've been for the last 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. But hopefully my instinct is that it's helping me grow in other ways, so that if I eventually do go back to manifesting my career as a more freelance person, or somebody who gets to just sort of follow whatever sort of projects I want to, and I don't have to be so accountable as I'm having to be right now, that I'll be in an even better position to do so. And also I'm hoping that I can bring all of that freedom and just an ability to kind of generate things that I had to do when I was on my own. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping I can bring that potential to the feminist press. I'm hoping it'll be a marriage.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a kind of audacity from winging it that one has developed as a freelancer, and then one brings that to the institution, and it shakes up the institution in, I think, good ways. So, all the best possible luck. To my frustration, we've got to go. But you have to come back and talk more about when there are more projects of your own, and also when there are specific projects coming out of the press that we can publicize and support.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And now we have some news you can use. If you know of any women composers, this is the time to pick up a pencil. The Women's Opera Commissioning Program that Opera America announced last December will have a symphonic counterpart supported by the Virginia B. Toomlin, that's Toulmin Foundation. their program for commissioning women in the performing arts. The same foundation is supporting the Opera Project. It's a new effort announced recently by the League of American Orchestras, and it's to be administered by the League and is a part of Earshot, EARSHOT, a national network of orchestras that offers readings and workshops for composers in the early stages of their careers. The composers taking part in Earshot include men as well as women, but only women will be candidates for 2 Toulmin Foundation commissions. The commission fee is $15,000, that's not chopped liver, and it includes a premiere of the commissioned work. The winners will be selected by a panel that includes some of the mentor composers and representatives of the orchestra and Earshot. So it's the League of American Orchestras that's administering it, and it's the Toulmin Foundation that is commissioning it. Bravo, Toulmin Foundation. Bravo, women composers. It is time for another quick break here at Women's Media Center Live. I am Robin Morgan, and coming up is my Ed McMahon. Now, some of you may not even know who that is, but a while ago, Kathy Najimy, the wonderful comedic genius, said to me after she'd guested on the show, "I want to be your Ed McMahon." Ed McMahon was to Johnny Carson the friend, the sounding board, the fellow conversationist, and they were both fellows, for years. And so obviously when Kathy said this to me, I was aghast and flattered and delighted. And in fact, she is joining the show as a peripatetic, now you'll see her, now you don't, regular, maybe once a month, maybe once every 6 weeks, whenever we feel so moved. And she will be chatting about anything she feels like, because she's always interesting. And we will kick back and have on the air, as it were, coffee, tea, or sometimes something stronger, and talk about life. And the first of those comes up just after this break. Stay around.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
Welcome back again. I hardly have to tell you who Kathy Najimy is, since she's known for memorable performances in more than 25 films, numerous TV projects. She was the entire last season of The Big C as Laura Linney's therapist. She's been on the Emmy Award-winning Fox hit King of the Hill as Peggy Hill. She, of course, is known and loved madly for her portrayal of Sister Mary Patrick in all the Sister Act movies. And, you know, I mean, it just goes on. And she is now the Ed McMahon of Women's Media Center Live. Kathy Najimy. Oh, Kathy, it's so good to have you here again.
Robin, it's my pleasure. You know that I keep begging you to be your Ed McMahon and to be your sidekick. If I had my way and the time, I would be with you every week, but then we'd lose so many listeners.
People are dancing on rooftops.
I'm looking at rooftops right now,
yes,
and they're covered with snow, which is so funny because everybody keeps saying, I've been traveling a lot, as you know,
yes,
trying to pin me down, and every time I arrive in a different city, they say, oh, my gosh, you know, how is it? And in New York, and I go, it's winter, it's snowing. And, I mean, that being said, I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to live in an apartment with heat, and our family has coats.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to say that, you know. Yeah. At the same time, I don't want it to sound flip because there are lots of people out there that are freezing.
Well,
but the notion that, like, snow is going to kill you, or that, like it's unusual to have a winter. Like, I came from Los Angeles, there were no seasons, so to all those people out there worried, you know, I'm just fine.
Yeah, well, no, but the thing is that we've got this extreme winter here, and in Sochi, where they're having the Winter Olympics, they've got 60-degree weather and the slopes are melting. And the right wing still manages to completely, deny that there's anything funny with the climate. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's unbelievable.
You just came from Florida where you were doing a film?
Yes, I'm still flying back and forth. I'm doing a film in Miami, and I'm also concurrently, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Is that the right word? Yeah.
I don't know where you're going with this.
At the same time. When you do something at the same time.
Yes,
I'm a little bit on cold medicine. Full disclosure, I have to let your people know I'm a little bit...
You're stoned on NyQuil. That's what you are.
I'm a little bit... Anyway, I'm on this television show, great television show called Veep. It's an HBO show that Julia Louis-Dreyfus stars in, and that is really great. I'm also, at the same time, and this never happens in my life, but at the same time I'm doing a film in Miami, so as you know more than anybody, I am hard to pin down because I'm always in some airport.
Because you lead the mad, wild, glamorous, traveling life of a star.
Well, I think just the only appropriate word would be mad, not the glamorous.
This is definitely concurrent. It was the correct use of the word. And what's the film?
The film is called A Change of Heart, and I did it because my friend Kenny Ortega is directing it, and he directed me years and years ago in a movie called Hocus Pocus, and we became good friends. And that's really great. It's fun. The crew is great. There's one very, 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 very insecure actor who acts out in interesting, bullyish ways. That it's not my favorite thing, but that happens when you land into a project with a bunch of people. But the crew and cast and company couldn't be more delightful, and that I can work with Kenny again is great. I just, I want to slap somebody.
Yeah, well, I can tell. But you were...
Sexism is alive and living still. We think...
No, now you tell me.
I mean, it's so, you kind of think, well, no, people really can't behave that way.
Yeah.
They're really not so misogynistic and sexist, but boy, it's eye-opening.
You were in Florida, which has become a crazy state.
Yes.
Between stand your ground and hanging chads and... Mm-hmm. I've never gotten over Gore v. Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was it odd, or you didn't have time to look around you because you were working?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get the tone of the state or the city because, unfortunately, and that's another thing when people say, "Oh my gosh, Miami, that's so great. You don't have to be in cold New York." And I don't want to dash their dreams, but I get up at the hotel and get in a car and go to the set, and then I get back in the car and go to the hotel,
You're
and that's
working.
So I did not get a sense of, the political environment there, but, I agree with you. It's so close too. Isn't it interesting, the difference between like New York and Florida and how close it is, but the mindset could be far apart.
I know. And within Florida, because, depending on where you are, it's all transplanted liberal Jews from New York.
Right.
But if you're up in the Panhandle, you might as well be in Mississippi.
Yeah, exactly.
I was born in Florida. Did you know that?
No, where?
I was born in a tiny little place called Lake Worth, which is just outside of West Palm Beach. But at 2 weeks, I looked around and said, "Oh, oh no. So
Get me out of here.
Yeah, I moved, dragging my blankets with me.
Right.
And my mother and my aunt, and moved up to New York. But
I should know that about you because I have to tell you, I have, along with these other little acting projects, the things that really fill my soul, or I'm working on 2 projects where I am co-creator, in some cases co-producer, and I can't tell you everything about them because they haven't really been solidified yet, but I think I mentioned to you last time I'm involved in something that may look like a miniseries or television event about Ms. Magazine. And so I have spent my very late nights from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. researching and reading all about you and the women who staffed Ms. and what was going on in the world at that time. And so I should know that you were born in Florida, but and that brings me such great joy. And then also I'm working on producing a Broadway show starring our good friend Gloria Steinem.
I know about that one.
Yeah. So I have, and it's so much fun to research, to go back in and hear clips and see pictures of you guys and see what the political environment was, and it just is so different from now.
Yes, it
that
is.
fight was a different fight. That was a real fight.
Well, and Ms. is still going. I mean, it's still going
40
strong.
years.
That's right. But the Ms. of now is different from the Ms. of them. It's continued to grow and to change and reflect its readership, although there still are incredibly loyal women who, have the very first issue and still are subscribers. It's amazing.
I'm one of them. I have every issue that ever was.
Wow.
When I was 14, I went to the grocery store, and I was telling Gloria this the other night, and she was surprised because she said, Kathy, most of the markets and grocery stores banned our magazine because of the covers.
That's right.
But I was at the Food Basket in San Diego and reached up when I was 14 and got Ms. magazine, and it was like
you were 14.
It was a lifeline.
Oh.
I was 14, yeah. It was a lifeline because you remember there was no internet. So if you were a young budding feminist, first of all, you didn't know that you were a feminist. You didn't know there was anybody else out there like you. There was no name for what you were. You just have this feeling of unrest and unjust in your gut. Yeah. And so to pick up Ms. magazine, all of a sudden it was a lifeline. I don't know why I'm telling you because you founded it, but
no, I didn't found it. I was
you came on
very early, but not
very early. Yeah, you were one of the you were in the first year staff though, right?
No, I think not. I think a year or two later, but I was not. In fact, I had come up to protest it because because the very first issue was a trial issue that New York Magazine had done as a pullout.
Right.
And I was, my group was Women's International Terrorist Conspiracy from Hell, and we were very radical, and we were appalled that there were ads, and there were ads for Clairol.
Right.
And Clairol's slogan at that point was, "If I have only one life, let me live it as a blonde." And so, and I made a point of saying that, if you're a black woman, that's, you have only one life and you're not living it as a blonde. So it was racist, it was commercial, it was patriarchal, it was capitalist. Oh my God. So a group of 4 or 5 of us went up to protest, and to find this group of harried women in friendly chaos sitting at orange crates because they didn't have desks yet, saying, "Oh, well, come in, sit down, have a cup of tea, tell us what we're doing wrong," which is, pretty disarming. I mean, takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. And so we told them what we did wrong, and then we went away, and there were a number of us who felt, well, we should continue to tell them and get more of a radical voice in the magazine. And then Gloria and I began to become friends, and it all developed from there. And indeed, when I came on carrying my radical torch. Big history behind it. Listen, I want to find out from you what do you have thoughts or advice or takes on the Oscar race? What do you have a favorites or?
Well, let's see. I wish I was qualified and seen all of the nominees, but I really I don't know if it's even up for something. I know it was up for Golden Globes, but there is a film by my friend Nicole Holofcener, starring Julia and James Gandolfini, who has passed, called Enough Said. Have you heard about that or seen it?
Yes. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's wonderful.
I just loved it. I'm a friend of and a fan of Nicole's, but I was just blown away. It was just so. I don't know about you, but I like really small films about people and stories. I don't like a lot of things getting blown up.
Yep.
I don't like people getting raped or coming down from outer space or anything like that. I like to follow real people in real time about real life issues. Those are my little slice of life. And this was, I think, the best work that Julia's ever done, and Nicole as well. And I really love it, but I don't know. I should look up and see, because I know Julia was up for Golden Globe, but I don't know if she was nominated.
For this.
Yeah. What do you like?
I don't know. I've hardly had time to see any movies this year.
Okay, we have to get together when my cold goes away and I stop flying all over. All right, I'm going to bring over, before March 2nd, my screeners, and we're going to sit there with some dry roasted peanuts and we are going to watch
the
nominees, because I have them all in a stack right here. The only one that I don't want to watch is she's a brilliant actress, Cate Blanchett, but I don't support any Woody Allen.
I don't either. I can't watch them anymore.
People just keep saying, "Oh, but they're good films," and that doesn't sit well with me. It kind of
but I can't stand it. I can't. It whether it should or it shouldn't, it colors the films for me. And in truth, his films have largely been about older men and much younger women too. So
yeah, and usually him with like
that's
a 19-year-old, and now everyone's surprised. Like, really?
Yeah.
Well, he married his daughter, and then all of his films has him having sex with 20 and 25-year-old. So anyway, yeah, we won't be watching that one.
We'll not be watching that, but the rest will eat lots of peanuts and popcorn. And this sounds like a great plan. We have to go. We have no more time.
No,
yes,
all right, I have to.
You have to. Well, yeah.
All right, my love. So thank you, and sorry. Please excuse my scratchy voice. Next time, I won't sound like, John.
It's very sexy. Not to worry about that. I adore you, and I hope you're feeling much better.
All right, thank you, sweetheart.
And now for one last quick break here at Women's Media Center Live, where I am still Robin Morgan. When we return, it'll be time for some fighting words.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio.
And we're back again, just in time for fighting words. Last week, I briefly discussed a controversy roiling Amnesty International considering a position over prostitution. And there was little time to go into it in any depth, but quite a few of you wrote in and asked me to, as it were, flesh it out. So here it is. It's pretty well known that for some 40 or 50 years now, the women's movement has been fighting pimps and brothel owners and traffickers, proposing a strategy of criminalizing the buyers while decriminalizing the women they buy, of offering support systems and services to the women, and of enforcing laws that criminalize pimps, traffickers, and brothel owners. There's been a lot of backlash during these decades, of course, the sex industry fighting back with the concept of, quote, sex work, and happy hooker type groups defending this as a great profession. But since, post-traumatic stress, which is found in 20 to 30% of combat veterans, is found in 2/3 of prostituted women, who are also disproportionately survivors of child sexual and physical abuse, rape and battery, kidnapping, assault with a deadly weapon, and addiction to drugs and or alcohol, the groovy profession argument doesn't go very far. Nonetheless, use of the phrase, quote, sex work, has become fashionable among some well-meaning liberal people who assume that this term somehow means a show of respect for the women involved, when actually it signifies approval for the context in which such women are trying to stay alive barely, or from which they're trying to escape. Well, after all these decades, progress finally seemed possible. Sweden, Norway, and Iceland have passed legislation holding the customers responsible for buying human beings for sex, criminalizing the buyers, and offering the women support programs, and obviously continuing criminalization of the pimps. This is now known as the Nordic model, although the French Parliament voted last December to follow Sweden's model. And similar laws are pending in the parliaments of Belgium, Ireland, and Scotland, and the European Union Women's Lobby has raised the Nordic model for a vote in the European Parliament. See, the thing is that the model works. Since the legislation began being enforced in Sweden, prostitution has been reduced by half, and the rate of HIV/AIDS in countries using the Nordic model has declined, as has the rate of sex trafficking, because there's less need simply to import the product. So this unglues the arguments of those who treat trafficking as a separate issue, which is bad, from prostitution. Not bad, because it's sex work. I can't ever figure out why they think being bought is less enslaving in one's own country than in another country. But anyway, just when you might have thought the case was proven, the sex industry strikes again, this time the glove on its fist being the most distinguished human rights organization in the world, Amnesty International. And what is even more surreal is that Douglas Fox, a former AI member, has proudly taken credit for being the force behind this AI London office policy recommendation. He is a campaigner for the International Union of Sex Workers, and he's a UK pimp who with his partner runs a major escort service. I swear to you, you cannot make these things up. Well, AI's policy document was leaked. It's called the Decriminalization of Sex Work. It takes the position that pimps and johns should be, quote, free from government interference because they should be allowed to, quote, exercise their autonomy. And furthermore, that governments have a, quote, obligation to establish an environment where pimps can operate freely to engage prostituted people. The AI document also manages to profoundly insult the disability community in passing by claiming that men with disabilities require access to prostituted women to further their sense of, quote, life enjoyment and dignity, close quote. Some AI spokespersons have tried to claim that the policy is just in the discussion stage, but AI's paper is more than just a policy discussion, because 2 weeks ago in the Northern Ireland Assembly, AI representatives asked that proposed legislation that would criminalize customers for buying prostituted women be struck down. So they're into activism now. AI has in fact been actively supporting and pursuing the sex industry's goals. It took decades for the global women's movement to lobby and pressure and convince AI that human rights were not reserved for people with penises to begin with. Since most violations of women's humanity take place in the so-called private, non-political realm, rape, battery, prostitution, trafficking, sexual abuse, harassment, femicide, and ad infinitum, ad nauseum, and since AI was fixated and mandated on governmental violations in the public sphere, arbitrary arrest, imprisonment, capital punishment, military and police torture, etc. It took all those decades for us to convince them to expand their mandate to include the rest of humankind. Now, AI London office has set things back by proposing what is a flat-out violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, on March 8th, there will be a protest at the London headquarters of AI, sponsored by the survivor-led group Abolish Prostitution Now. It will be joined by a worldwide virtual protest online. Information about that and about a global petition to Amnesty are locatable at abolishprostitutionnow.wordpress.com. abolishprostitutionnow.wordpress.com. Hopefully, Amnesty International will regain its vision and its clarity and soul and realize that survivors' rights are women's rights, are human rights. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS Radio WJFK 1580 AM, or you've been visiting us at WMCLive.com for this and a whole rich archive of all our previous episodes. Be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thank you for being with us. Join us next week when we kick off Women's History Month with a special Women and the Oscars show with producer Abigail Disney and rejoined by my sister co-founder of the Women's Media Center, actor, activist, author Jane Fonda. Meanwhile, look for us on Facebook and Twitter for alerts about surprise upcoming programming during March, only here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 CBS Radio and WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.